Recording. Sweet. So, what do you guys want to build today? What kind of, just a single model, nothing wild, nothing crazy. We will get to forms and associations and we'll build up to it in a similar way that we built Sinatra. Right? Just want to show you the auto magic that's happening. Something Thanksgiving? Sure. Thank you for remembering that holiday, by the way, because a lot of people think that the holiday after Halloween is Christmas. Sure. Rails new, right? These are just bash commands, right? Rails new what? What's the name of this project? Sure, Thanksgiving. What that model is, we'll figure out. Wow. That did a lot for me. Who's run Rails new yet? Cool. So we'll go over it. Wow, look. You know what's bad when you like finish the scroll and it like takes up more than the full screen? All right, so do you remember when I did like that Cornel new? It kind of built that skeleton for me for Sinatra. That's because a student built that graduated here a few years ago. I was like, all right, we need like some sort of like builder for the skeleton. Rails comes with it out of the box, and it's just called Rails new. You just name it whatever you want, like Thanksgiving or Falvor Town, and it'll build whatever you want. Here's the skeleton, right? First thing it does is build this README, it builds your rake file, it locks the Ruby version to what it is that you're using. The config RU that's running that application controller, if you remember, it gives me this git ignore, and we'll talk about that way later, and it makes it its own Git repository, right? It initializes its own Git repository within it. It's just important to know because as I start to push up all your lecture code, the folder in and of itself is its own Git repository. All right, so it's going to have its own version control, its own commit history, and all that. And you can easily just remove it, but this is where this is coming from, if it ever makes sense for you later. Here I'm just building this like main app folder, and I've got all the things that you know and love, right? Controllers here. You have some views with the layout. We have our models right here. Whoops, our models. Something called jobs, something called helpers, and our controllers. Cool? So just that MVC is pretty much like built for you out of the box as like a skeleton. So you could do whatever it is that you want with your Rails app, right? Then it builds all this other stuff for you, right? We'll get to that later. But the important things are like your config environments, right? You have something called routes here. And then boom, boom, boom. It builds so much. Rails is a monster. If you thought like Sinatra was kind of big, you're like, oh my God. And then it actually will run bundle install for you, which is pretty nice. Like right out of the box. You're like, Rails new. Not only did it make it, but it ran bundle for me. Look at all these gems. Out of control. That's a lot. So let's cd into Thanksgiving. Because remember, when you first make it, it doesn't actually change the directory for you. So let's go in there. Cool. Before we do anything else, let's take a look at what it actually looks like. Boop, boop, boop. Awesome. So here is app, right? A little bit more complicated, soft, a little bit more complicated than the Sinatra, but here it is. You got your controllers, got your models, and you have your views. Pretty easy so far, right? Let me just close all this out. Boom. You have config, and then you have something called routes. I think we know a little bit about them right now, but I'm going to try my best to clarify any questions you may or may not have, so everyone's kind of like on the same page and can start building and having more fun with Rails. Super fun, right? Our database, which is going to probably hold what? The schema and all the migrations, right, that map it to the model in the database. Awesome. Yeah, and then pretty standard stuff, right? My gem file locked because it ran that bundle for me. And then like a pretty generic README, right? Like, hey, I used Rails for this. Cool. Any questions so far? Awesome. So let's build out the app. Normally, the first thing I do, right, when I build out this app is I need to figure out what my app is kind of like using, right? Like some sort of like model, like what my app is going to be built around. So normally I would do what? I would go right into my app and I'd be like, cool, models, and then I would make a model, like right here. That's what we're used to, right? But instead, Rails has some auto magic for you. They're called generators, right? So Rails, just like Rails new, I can do something called Rails generate. But if I'm really lazy, which I am, I'll just do Rails G. And what this is, yeah, it's money, it's some money. And what Rails G is going to do is it's going to generate files for me. right? So what's the first thing we want in here in terms of what it is that we're trying to build? We're looking for the model, right? So Rails G, and I'm going to tell it right here, I want this model. So what is the model that we want? Is it capital M?
Yeah.
Capital M? Yeah. Cool. So what model do we want to build this Thanksgiving around? Is everyone cool with turkey?
Gratitude.
What kind of attributes does gratitude have? Like just a Boolean? True or false?
Yeah, sincere.
More Booleans.
Sincere.
More Booleans.
No, I like the degree of sincerity.
Going once? Going twice? Sold. Sure. Gratitude. Right? Gratitude, like this. Right? Cool. Cool, right? Are we cool with this?
We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
I was like,
What do you mean we don't have to do this? Too late. It was sold at auction. Cool. So what are the attributes? Ready? What are the attributes? Sincerity? Sincerity? That's like not spelled right at all. Let's just put sincere, right? Whether or not you are sincere. My M is lowercase, right? I thought so. I thought so. Cool. All right, so we have sincere, right? And what type of attribute is this? It's a Boolean, right? So I'm going to tell it that, hey, it's a Boolean. Cool. I'm going to hit a space, and I'm going to say, what else is there? What about like the message, right? Like what are you actually grateful for, right? So we can have message, and this is a string. Most of your attributes are either what? Numbers, Booleans, strings, like arrays, hashes, binary trees, JSON data. Like what would you describe them as? What piece of data are most of your attributes? Amongst the data structures, right? Like, are they numbers? Generally numbers or strings or Booleans, right? Strings, right? So if I had to pick some sort of default for an attribute, which one would I want to pick? String. So default, if it's string, I don't need to actually add this. So let's try that, all right? What else? What did you say, like level of sincerity?
Yeah.
So level, great. And that is what? An integer? Great. What? Okay. So whomst? Whomstoever? Right? We're gonna get a little too complicated, but sure, just whomst, we'll just leave it as a string. So if it's a string, do I need to put it in? No, cool. All right. So if I run this, what do you think will happen? It's just gonna make a model for me, right? Is that all it'll do though? Let's see. Don't break on me. Don't break. Don't you dare. Money. So, cool beans. Cool beans. So, let's take a look at this model that it built for us. What's that? A little bit of this. A little gratitude action. Oh, wow. Great. It already inherits. Cool. So, we have a gratitude model, right? What normally comes after this gratitude model? Right? We have this model which represents what? Something about how it's mapped to the database? Yeah, it should be active. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm going to leave that alone, actually. But either way, cool. What else besides the model do we need? A controller, right? But before we get to the controller, what two things always go hand in hand for the ORM, the object relational mapper? I need the migration, right? Because one, I have the model that Ruby knows about, and then I need the database. I actually need the table that the model's going to talk to, right? So let's see where I would put that. I'd probably put that in the DB folder, in this migration folder. What's this? What's this? Oh, sorry. Oh, good. Great. It looks like, for some reason, there's some sort of migration here already. And let's just take a look at it. Oh my Lord. My goodness. Boolean, string, level, whomst. It's all there. So when I do my generate, Rails will actually build not only my model, if I Rails G model, but it will also build the matching migration. Is that cool? Because they always go hand in hand, so it just makes sense. Kind of like when I do my new create, I'm going to always put them together because I need the form and I need to be able to handle that form submission, right? These things just pair together. So if I have my model, I probably need some sort of migration to map it to. And so it built it for me. But did it migrate it? No, I could tell immediately because what am I missing here? Cool. So I can do something like this, rake db migrate. Right? In Rails 5, they've extracted a lot of the regular rake commands, and they want everything in Rails land. So this command looks pretty familiar. We can actually also do Rails db migrate. And all it will do is run rake db migrate for you. Cool? So let's let that rip. Cool. So here we have our schema. All right, we have our table, and everything's migrated. I can also check out, what do I normally do? Rake console, right, to check to see in my console my database. Rails also, get into that Rails land, right? Rails console. But for the extra lazy, Rails C. Yeah? I'm mega lazy. If I could just type RC, I would. No. Not right now. Nah, that's mega lazy. But what you can do is in your bash profile, you can make an alias, right? And you just like RC equals Rails C. Wow, that's lazy. That is super lazy. And believe me, like on my home setup, I have that. It's just, I don't want to type all of it. Either way, cool. So I can probably do something like gratitude. I shouldn't have done something that's hard to spell. .all. And I can see, does it exist? And it does. It doesn't give me this like uninitialized constant error. Does that make sense? So it looks like my model is correctly mapped to my migration that was migrated successfully, and I have my schema. All mod 1 stuff, but now with the power of Rails. Cool. That's a lot of damage. All right. I don't know why I said that. Yeah, flex tape. Great. So we alluded to this earlier, right? Once we're done with our model, right, in our MVC, what else are we missing? Right? The controllers and the views, right? The V and the C from MVC. So does it make sense to build the view right now? Why would it not make sense to build the view right now? Who's sending back those views, right? Like who's serving up the views? Who is the server, the waiter here, rather, right? The controller is the go-between. So if I have my model, right, does it make sense to build like the end product, or do I need sort of that go-between first? I need the go-between first, right? So let me then Rails, if I can Rails generate a model, what can I probably also do? Generate the controller. Cool? So what is this controller? The gratitude controller, right? So do I just put, do I spell it all the way out? Gratitude controller? Just gratitude? This is a guess? I like your guess. Any other guesses? Lowercase underscore? Control. Do we have as any thoughts here? What was that? Plural what? Gratitudes? Right. Do I also need the controller afterwards? No. So here the controller is actually going to be pluralized. All right, so don't forget that. And if you do, it's a very easy fix. All right, so gratitudes. I don't need to put gratitudes controller because I'm generating a controller for it. Rails will probably think that I want to generate a controller for something called gratitudes controller. And then I'm going to wind up getting something like gratitudes controller controller. Does that make sense? So don't trick Rails, all right? It's trying to help you. Rails is your friend. And look at that. I can always verify because I can see that it built something like gratitude's controller, something like that. Oh, I'm sorry, this one. Boop, boop. Cool. Let's take a look. Look. In my controllers, I now have something called gratitude's controller, right? Which is separate from my application controller. And look, it automatically inherits from application controller. So my application controller, just like in Sinatra, inherited from Sinatra controller base, this is inheriting from something called action controller base, which is the Rails version of it. Yeah? Same thing here, right? There was like some sort of active record base here. This is pulling in from application record, which is like the Rails version that's built on top of active record. Cool? So do you see how like this is like kind of like next level stuff? All right. What's in this gratitudes controller? Yeah, there are controller methods in here, right? So let's think. I want to put in all RESTful routes in here. So what were they? All 7 of these amazing RESTful routes. Index. Cool. Next. Cool. What else? Okay, you guys are jumping around, but I could do edit. I could fly with that. What else we need? Huh? Let's try to go in a little bit of like a concerted order here. So new pairs always with what? Awesome. And then edit naturally always pairs with? Right. And it's because one shows the form. Would you say what? Boolean? Oh, okay. Very good. Right, so remember, new and create, all right, are paired together because one shows the form and then one handles that form submission. Right? Edit, update. One shows the form, one handles that form submission. Right? So here, if you remember, the index essentially is some sort of route that was a get to slash what? Gratitudes, something like that. And then that would do something. Here, we're in Rails land now, right? Let's build methods to handle this. Instead of like this get, which is kind of hard coding the route in Sinatra. Here, if I were to make a method, right, just like in Ruby land, this method, I had to name this method something. What would I want to name this index method? Wow, it's pretty intuitive here, right? Probably can do the same thing for what? What would you want to call the show method? Wow. Did you guys build Rails? It's incredible. All right. Now I know I need to write some sort of code here, right? So remember the controller does what 2 things? Interacts with what? The model, and then sends back a response, which we know now temporarily as like the view. I keep saying that because like it does more than that. But don't worry. Just the view, right? It's going to send back that view response. Cool? So in my index, right, in my get to slash gratitudes, right, do end, what did I put in here? What do I need in my index? Right? I need what? Gratitude.all. Right? At gratitudes equals gratitude.all. So far, like no real difference, right? That transition is very easy to kind of visualize and make. What would the response be? Am I just going to ERB it up here? Right? What would the response be? So ERB, right, through Sinatra is essentially I'm going to send you this HTML form, right, which is really like an ERB file. But really, what am I really trying to do here? I'm trying to what? What should be happening in terms of the browser? You want to see something, right? When you see something in programming, it's known as like rendering, right? I'm going to render this view to your page. Does that make sense? It's like the first time I'm introducing this keyword called render. So the response is I'm going to render something to you. Is that cool? So in my render, right, which is just a method, right? Render is just a method that like Rails comes with. And so I can put these like arguments in there. And what argument do I want to render? Right? Just index like this.
You don't even need round number.
Don't worry. We'll get there. We'll get there. Is this cool? I'm going to render something called index. Or I can even throw in the symbol. It's fine. Totally fine. Cool? Does this look any different, really, from Sinatra? No. The thing is, with Sinatra, I told it when I did a get to gratitudes, it did all of this. Here, I don't have a get to gratitudes, which is like interesting. Where can I tell it when I get to /gratitudes to do index? What does this look like to you? Some sort of path or resource or route, right? So let's find out with Command T if I have a file called routes. Right? It's under my config folder, so I just put routes in here. But to find it, it would be bloop, config, under routes. Cool? So here, there's great documentation right here. But don't worry, I'm here for you. Bloop, right? Go. It's just docs, right? Like, hey, if you want to learn more about routing, go to this website, which is the Rails docs, which are great. Actually, one of the students in Mod 4, it's like a 10-second tangent, dressed up as a doctor and had like a giant ruby stitched to their pocket. It was the Ruby docs. I was like, wow, so good. Awesome. So, what did we say this route to this index for gratitudes was? Okay, I'll help you out here. A little bit of this action. Okay, so I do a get to gratitudes. So if I do a get to gratitudes, how can I tell it specifically what to do?
Two gratitudes index.
Great. So this get right here to gratitudes is going to point to something. Do I want to point to the application controller? What controller should I be pointing to? Great. Gratitudes. Cool. Do I want this /gratitudes to go to show? Do I want it to go to new? Do I want to go to delete? I want it to go where? Okay, cool. So remember, back in Mod 1, when we talk about methods, you know what I'm saying? A little hashtag action. Just kidding. Hashtag. Oh. Very good, thank you.
You just copy and paste it.
I should. I'm a dirtbag.
What was the two again?
No worries. When I do a get to /gratitudes, I want to point it to something. This is just the way Rails is written. I'm pointing it to something. Because you remember all those problems that we had in Sinatra where it was like, look, it's in the owner's controller. Stop looking in the application controller. Please. Here we can just specify exactly which controller I'm going to. So here, just for the sake of like sanity, I'm going to do like the path / the resource / the URL. Right? I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Cool. Right? Like whatever this is hitting in my browser, I want to point it to something, right? Like point to a controller with a specific method, right? Here when I say method, I'm talking about like an action. So whenever I use the phrase controller action, I'm talking about controller. This is an action. This is an action, right? The new is an action. The create is an action. So whenever you hear controller action, just think, this is the controller. The action essentially winds up being the method that I'm going to be calling. Cool? Any questions on that? Any questions on like how the route is written, what it's doing, and the parts of the route? Yes, sir.
Theoretically, if I wanted to refer to the application controller, should I do application #index? Just theoretically.
Theoretically, right, if I had another controller, right, let's just make one, right? So like loser controller, right? Loser controller. right? Actually, no, that's mean. We don't do that here. Oh yeah, it's winners controller where we're all invited. Cool. And then I would do this. Cool. And then this would not be that. It would be winners. All right. And I had some method that I wanted to show all the winners, which is just an array of all of us, obviously. What method would I call that? What action? Index, right? Sweet. And this is like all of us. Cool. Let's just put this in a string. This is not actually going to run. This is just like a terrible example. All right. It's just whatever, some string. In my routes, when I go to /gratitudes, I can customize it, change it, go to a different controller from what is like the standard. And I can tell it to go to the winners controller, running the winners index method. I can do that if I want to. I mean, I'm not going to. But this would, in fact, execute this method. If I did localhost 3000 /gratitudes, it would hit the winners controller, the winners index. Sorry, I drank some bubbly. Any questions on like custom routing? Cool. All right. So let's just leave it because winners are cool, right? Actually, let's not leave that though. Are there any questions on like this so far in terms of like why I wrote this, why I wrote this hash here, why I wrote index, and why I wrote the get to slash? All right, great. If I want to test this, right, I want to test this controller action, test this route, what should I do? Let's start the server. Shotgun? No, we're in Rails land now. Rails server. This will be the only time I type it because I can just change it to Rails S. Yeah? What'd you say?
I know what it stands for.
And you're like, Rails, start that server, right? And then you get really lazy and then make an alias and put RS. Cool. Rails server, yeah? Awesome. So I can tell that I'm no longer on port 9393 or 9292 because I'm listening on something called 00000. It's too many zeros. It's fine. 3000. 0000, right, just stands for localhost, my current local machine, which makes sense because if you remember the intro to the internet lecture, where like all these IP addresses will map to an actual website, what website are we really running? Like only my internal machine. So I'm just going to zero them out, right? I'm never going to really hit a real live website online. I'm simulating one on my local machine. So whenever you see these 4 zeros, it's just a shorthand, rather the long version of localhost. Are there any questions on that? Cool? Sweet. Let's do it. New tab, right? Localhost. This time we're going to port what? Cool. Yay, you're on Rails. Yeah. Yeah. Right? As opposed to like Sinatra doesn't know this ditty. Trash user experience, right? Why did I not get what I wanted? How do I get to test, how do I get to test this index method and this route? If I go to /gratitudes, right, what's it going to do for me? Go to the gratitudes controller and go to the gratitudes index method, right? So let's do that. /gratitudes, because I learned my lesson. And I'm just going to do this. But I copy that extra little thing. Cool. So, what do I see? What's this? Okay, so I'm missing some sort of template, right, under a gratitudes folder looking for something called index. So naturally, right, I probably need to build in my views a gratitudes folder which was built for me. Wow, amazing. This was built for me when I did Rails G model or Rails G controller. Who says model? Who says controller? Cool. Why controller? Because the controller's the go-between, right? The controller is the one that serves up that view. The model doesn't serve up the view. The model doesn't touch the view directly. So when I generate the model, why would the views come with it? Right? It don't make no sense. You know what I'm saying? So if I generate the controller, because it's the go-between, it's probably going to generate this empty views folder for me. Right? Because I know if I have a controller, I probably am going to serve up some views. It doesn't build anything for me. It's just an empty folder because it doesn't know what I want to build yet, which just makes sense. So let's build something. What should I name this? Index.html.erb? Or can I just get lazy? Let's lazy it up, right? And what should be in here? HTML, right? Index page, period. Cool. What else do we need in here? Huh? We'd probably do all the gratitudes in here, right? So like add gratitudes, right? Because again, this instance variable is passing it right into this render. So add gratitudes dot each do, right? With a G, because I can't spell, I'm not going to risk it. All right? Does this look like valid HTML to you? Exactly. I'm going to interpolate it, right? Well, end action, cool. And then I just want to just show my G's, right? But G what? Let's look at the schema. There we go. I have sincere, I have message, I have level, and I have whomst. What should I go with? Let's go with message, right? Cool. Dot message. Am I going to see anything on my page?
No.
What? I need to seed that database. I have like no data in there. It's going to render this index page. It's going to show me all my gratitudes. And I have 0 gratitudes. Because that's what a good human being does, right? Cool, let's make some gratitudes. Let's make some gratitudes, right? Cool, boom. You guys seen that? Let's get some shoes. No?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, cool, 4 people. So, how do I get into my console again? Rails console, right? In case anyone's wondering what the C stood for. Right? We're in Rails land now. Cool. Rails console. How can I make one of these gratitudes? Cool. Gratitude.new. Cool. And for those that don't remember, like me, I have a lot of these. Oh, mother punk. Cool. 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 Let's just do a little bit of this. Ah, you like that? Cool. Just me? All right. So first thing is what? What's the first attribute? Yeah, the first attribute's Boolean. Sincere, right? And that is going to be? Obviously, always, right? Default value. Cool. What about message? Appreciate you. Right? That's how all the cool kids talk. Right? What's the level? Hundo P, max level, right? Appreciate you. And who is this for? Whomst. Aww. My heart. Cool. Good deal. Let's make some more. What's this second message? Very good. Level? Oh, we cranked that up, right? Obviously. And who's that for? Huh? Who? Bay? Capital letters, right? Because it's an acronym. So, just one more, just for good measure. And what's this message?
What? We also make sincere false.
Glad you're here. Yeah, this one's definitely false. Glad. You know what? Glad. Oh no, I don't want to put the extra apostrophe in there. Just mess me up, right? Glad you're here. But I wanted to say it just because in case you thought, like, you know, grammar people. So, false. Fine. 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 Guess what? -1, right? And who's that for? Who? What did you say? Okay, great. Good to know, good to know. Good to know the one time you participate in lecture. The good thing is you're listening, right? And that's kind of all I care about. Great. Didn't think I saw that coming. Anyways. Whew. That was intense. All right, we have our seed data, right? What do I do again? Shotgun? Shotgun. Rails server. Cool? Cool. And again, /gratitudes is going to point me to, right? If I go back to my routes, /gratitudes is going to point me to a controller called gratitudes with a method called index. So let's do it. Appreciate you. #blessed. Glad you're here. Oh, this is actually kind of nice. Actually turned out pretty nice. It's like one, I didn't expect that coming, but this feels great. This feels great. This feels right. So this is the index page. Cool? Did everyone see how that works and how that all connects? Cool. Good deal. Now let's do something else. Something I want to help you with. All right? I can, in fact, probably tell it to go to this route. Actually, I'll do that later. Something I want to see is Ruby has a lot of syntactical sugar, right? If I know I'm doing some sort of method and I'm passing it in these arguments, I do not have to pass in these bananas. And it just looks like this. I call them bananas, just, I don't know, parentheses, sorry. It's like looking for that word, right? And it should work just fine. The crazy part is, I just probably blast this all together and hit refresh, and it'll still work. Cool. It's like actually refreshing if we just take a look at this. Bloop. Refresh. Cool. Yeah? How did it do that? Great question. Rails, usually when I do that, people are like, but this class is like, seen it, no big deal, NBD. This is how it knows, right? Rails understands that there's some sort of pattern happening here. There's like a convention over configuration. And what does that really mean? It just means that if I agree upon a way to write something, then I can already tell what it's going to do. So if I have something called index, I'm probably going to be rendering, I don't know, a file called index. So before I even put this render in here, it said that the template was missing. Do you remember that? It said the template was missing. So if that template's missing, it told me exactly where to go to put it in. It said, hey, your template's missing, and I'm looking for it in views, in a folder called gratitude, in a file called index, because the name of the method was called index. Very likely, you're rendering something called index. So it's just going to say, great, index is going to render index. So if I don't have this, it doesn't really matter. But what I can do is I can tell it, instead of in my index, I have something called all, right? All of them, gratitudes, whatever. I'm not going to get crazy. Just called all, right? By default, it's going to be looking for something called what? Index. But because I'm specifically telling it to render all, what do you think it's going to render? Something called all. But where? My views, gratitudes, something called all.erb, right? And just for funsies, let's find out. Cool. If I were to go to gratitudes, what do you think will happen now? Remember, gratitudes points to something called gratitudes index. Gratitudes index gives me all the gratitudes and then renders all. So what will happen if I go to /gratitudes? Let's find out. So now do you see this like custom routing over here? There's a built-in level of configuration, right? And you can stray from that, but only when you really know what's happening, right? So for right now, we're just going to build all the RESTful routes, and it should all kind of piece together and make sense. And then as you build out your custom features, you can start playing with it as you want to. Is that cool? Yes?
Would you ever do something like this, like create a plural instance variable, like add gratitude, so that for some reason now we'll see it?
Oh, yeah. If I make something and I never pass it into the view, why would I even bother, right? Like, that's silly. So, no. If you're making stuff up and never using it, I'm going to question your code, right? As any developer would, right? Like, even you all looking at each other's code eventually, when you're in mod 5, even mod 4, in mod 3, or right now, you're going to look over like, hey, what's that line doing? Like, I just made it, but I don't really use it. You'd be like, huh. Right? And so, yeah, absolutely. Good point and good catch. But I just put render all as like a kind of like sidetrack to show you what's happening with the render. But if I never use it, it's bad. If you use a linter, some of you use a linter, it'll like yell at you. It'll say, hey, you defined this method or you defined this thing, but you never use it. You'd be like, yeah, great job. But it's also because it's not good practice to make data that you never use. So good that you caught that. You had a question?
It sounds like we don't use them anyways, but if we were rendering everything, would we not have to worry about redirects anymore because we're just rendering them?
You will have to worry about redirects, and I'm going to dive much deeper into redirect in a different lecture. But for right now, we're gonna render. Cool.
So if Rails follows like the RESTful convention, why doesn't it create like the index in the views? Why doesn't it create an index hierarchy into the hierarchy? Because like that's what we follow, right?
Very good question, right? The question is, if I'm always going to be building these CRUD functionalities, right? Why doesn't Rails just build me the index, new, update, delete, create, edit? Now I'm going out of order. See, it's not fun, right? Yeah. But why doesn't it build me these 7 restful routes for me? It's because sometimes you just don't want them, right? Like, let me ask you a question. Let's just start thinking through like all the applications we've ever interacted with. When you log in to a website, are you creating a new login, editing a login, deleting a login, or like viewing a login? You're just gonna view, right? And you're probably just gonna submit something in this login, like a username and password. Do I ever like edit it? Do I like delete it? No, so like a lot of times, you will not need the full CRUD functionality. But sometimes, like, login's kind of like abstract and weird. But let's think about like a bank, right? You have your bank account. And you're on Bank of America, USAA, I don't know, TD Bank, whatever bank you use. Chase, sorry, we're in New York City, right? Chase. I'm not sponsored, obviously. Can you edit your bank account? That'd be nice though, right? Just drop a couple 9s in there, you know what I'm saying? Can you just view it? Can you create a bank account on your front end, on your experience? Can I just go, I'm gonna make a new bank account? You probably gotta go to the branch or like make a call or something, right? So, do I need the full 7 CRUD? Can you delete your bank account? Like right off your app, you're like, you know what, great, there's $8,000 in there. Pfft, I don't need that, obviously. I'm just gonna delete this premier checking. Do I want to do that? Are you even allowed the option? No, you're literally only allowed to see what? Probably index and show, right? Like I want to see all my accounts, right? To include my overseas Swiss bank account. And like my checking and my savings, right? And then when I click one, I get all the details. I see the routing number, the actual checking number, the millions of dollars that are in there, right? I mean, we know this feeling, right? The millions of dollars that are in there. That's just the show. So often I don't need all of them. And so if that's the case, if Rails is building all of them for me automatically, I'm gonna wind up deleting them all the time. So it's better that it's like, hey, this is just good practice. This is the convention. Like, go ahead and build it out. There is a way that Rails will build everything for you, but we won't get there quite yet. But does that make sense? That like, oftentimes you don't need everything. Here I'm teaching you how to build everything because I just want to arm you with the tools to be a developer so that you know how to do everything. That make sense? Cool. Good question. Any other questions? like nebulous ideas, meaning of life. Great. Let's build more CRUD then. Yeah? So in this show, didn't need that, sorry. What do I need in show? What is the RESTful route for show? I'm sorry, it's a get, you're right. But it broke my Sinatra app. A get to where? Colon ID. This is the route that I want to hit for show. Cool? Then like do, end, and all that, right? And what do I put in here? Dot find with? Right. And where is this params ID coming from? The URL, right? In the same way. So if that is the case, this is the route that I need to hit. And I kind of want to like go to show. So remember when I did this? Bloop. Let's do that. Boom. So far so good. And what do I want to point it to? Do I want to point it to the application controller? I want to point it to the show controller, the gratitudes controller, but what method? Do I want to do index again, or do I want to do show? Cool. It's too helpful. Cool. So that's kind of how that route is working, right? Cool. So let's do that, right? How do I test this? What route should I be hitting to test this? Gratitude/ID. And what do I get when I hit it? Some sort of missing template error, right? Because remember, this is just hitting the model. Oops, the Moodle. Oh, dang it. Blech. And then I need to send some sort of response, right? And then, is it ERB here? Rails likes to render. And what am I rendering? Show. Do I need to render show if my method is called show? If my action is called show? I don't. But I'm going to leave it here just because it like looks good, right? Just so you can see it. But I, in fact, do not need it because show knows it's going to do something called show. Unless I customize it and tell it to do something else. Unless I specify. But here, it's almost redundant, but I'm going to leave it here just so you all have the code and you understand it. So in my views, in my gratitudes folder, I'm going to build something called show. Right? Show me the money. Oh wait, we have emojis. That's how we communicate in life. Oh, I was feeling bad yesterday, so I sent that a lot. Money. Oh man, see, wouldn't it be nice to have like all the custom emojis in here? Right? That's the move, TM. Ooh, oh yeah. Oh yeah, if I got custom emojis, I'm Mike Changing it everywhere. And what do we need in here from the controller? The instance variable, right? We have @gratitude, and we have, remember, all of these. Actually, let's just do this. Oh, God, I'm lazy. Cool, cool, cool. Want to see something wild? I think someone else knew about this. All right, if you just like, if you hold down, hold on, bloop. If you, it's like another Rails package. If you hold down Option and scroll, you can do this. And then you have like multiple ones. Yeah, like that. Cool. And then you can do like @gratitude. I know. Typing on the next level. Boom, boom, and then a little bit of this. Oops, a little bit of that. Oops, a little bit of that. Boom. Next level. Cool. And what's all these? Is this HTML? I ask a lot because it's important. Boom. Boom. Yeah? Yes, sir. Okay, so in the Rails snippet package that I have, if I highlight something, whatever that part I highlight, when I add the Rails snippet with my Command-Shift period, it'll do it. So I can like nest Rails, like if I just do UD and I just drop it, oops, it's not gonna work. It'll go like whatever I actually highlight. So yeah, so like something weird, and I can be like, oh, this is the Ruby part. I can just drop it in right there. Here, I'll help you. Ready? Command comma opens up your settings, right? The more you're a developer, the more you're just like, I gotta get these shortcuts down, right? You're gonna go install, and you're gonna look for something called Rails snippets. I have it, so I don't want to disable it, but this is what I would install. If I wanted to go to the docs for it and see all the shortcuts that it provides, I would just click Rails snippets right here. I would just like click the link. Cool. Man, I love shortcuts. Just love them. Y'all got any more damn shortcuts?
When you write comments in the ERB file, do you use like the HTML convention of commenting, or do you use Ruby?
Okay, so this happens to a lot of folks, and I'm just going to take the 2 seconds to go off on the tangent, right? So you have a p tag, right? And then you're like, okay, great. I wrote like some Ruby in here, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, great. I don't want this anymore, so I'm going to comment it out. Oops. Did I add like, oh yeah. Oh, it did it for me. It's intense. Whoa. Cool. Anyways, if you, right, where's the HTML comment? If I just did, whoa. You know the HTML comment? It looks like this.
And the
Oh yeah. Ugh. Here, right? I forget. What's the comment? It's just 1 exclamation point?
Right after the first opening parentheses or whatever.
Oh, man, it's too many Rails helpers. See what happens. All right, cool. P tag. I'm gonna drop a little bit of this one, right?
I think it's exclamation point dash dash.
Yeah.
Like, what is like when you use like the add shortcut, like command like backslash, like it doesn't know what to use.
Oh, there it is. We did it. The point is, I'm sorry. Your question?
So when you press like a command like the slash and add, it comments it out by itself, but like it doesn't know which syntax to use when you have the ERB file.
Correct. It doesn't really know. So the problem is like when you have something like this, like awesome Ruby, right? This will run an error inside your like Rails project because this is Ruby. So you have to let it know what time it is. This shows the page. This shows on the page. This does not show on the page. This will comment out your Ruby. So you need to comment both. All right? It's totally gross. It's way better to be like, you know what? Go. Right? So just remember, like, you can't just comment out the HTML because it's going to see some sort of Ruby in there and actually read it. You need to comment out the Ruby as well. Cool? That was very much worth our time. You brought that up? Drive myself crazy, thinking of Ruby comments. Cool? All right. Any questions on this show so far? Cool? Let's find out. How do I get to this show page? What was the route? / interpolated ID? Sure. Let's just try one for now. Boom. Show me the money. Throw up money sign TM. That's an interesting way. True. Appreciate you, Hunted Mom. This is a fun project, yeah. Cool, yeah. Allowance? How old is everyone here? Wow, I get allowance every 2 weeks from my boss. Cool. So great. Now I have these routes, right? Everyone kind of understands what's going on. So I can also do something, right? Like in my gratitudes controller, I can do render show. I'm trying to think of a good way. Okay, got it. In my index, right? I have each of these. Cool? I can make these, and this is just like a Rails helper method, right? I can make these links simply by doing link to. And now link to, right, is going to take a couple parameters. The first one is going to be what gets displayed on the page. So for right now, I just want this to display, the actual message, right? The second one is going to be the actual link I want to go to. So here, I can easily just go to gratitudes / and then this particular one, right, G. I can do g.id. But is this gonna work here? What does this look like? I want to what? Oh wow, yeah, it does look like a Ruby, right? But the weird thing is, this whole thing is already Ruby. So I can get away with string interpolation. Cool? I'm building interesting habits with this class. Looking like a Ruby, yeah. Yeah, I can use string interpolation. Who understood why string interpolation works here in this ERB file on this particular line? Who understood why? All right, cool. Just quick refresher. This whole thing I made into Ruby. So that being said, this can be string interpolated. I don't want to embed Ruby in my Ruby, right? Like it wouldn't make sense if I did something like this here because I'm already in Ruby. Ruby's going to be like, wait, less than, % equals. And it's not going to know. Like, yo, listen, one command at a time, right? Cool? Yes, sir.
Can you show the page?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to. I was just going through the line. I'm not going to write a bunch of code like, great, it should work. Good luck, everyone. But yes, I will show the page. Thank you so much for that. Cool. So, all right, we're going to index, right? Where's index? / gratitudes. Let's find out. Boom. What happened? Hmm? Cool. All right, so can I just get rid of it? Cool. Boom. These are links now. So something I want to show you is they're cool because I only brought the inspector so that, like, look where my mouse is, like right here-ish. And as I go, you'll see them come up, right? So I'll try my best to here. So I have 1, a 2, a 3. All right, so it's going to go to each one of these. And what route does that actually look like? The show. So if I click one, it'll take me to the show page, right? So if I hit #blessed, there it is. Cool. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to just like go back to the index from this page though? Right? Because that way I have like a good user experience. I can make a request, get a response, make another request, get a response, instead of using this back button. That's trash. It's trash. Yeah?
So is that when you do like the underscore path?
I'll show you. It's a good question. In my show page, right, which is show here, I probably want some sort of, how do I do that link again? Link to, right? And what's the first argument? Right? Shows up on page. This is the text. And the second argument is going to be the path. So /gratitudes. Right? This is the path that I want to show up on like the bottom left corner. Like this is kind of what comes up. So let's find out. There it is. Shows up on the page. It's going to go to a /gratitudes. Cool? So if I click it, boop, bloop, 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 bloop. Oh yeah, forgot about that one. That was rough. Hurts the feelings. Let's just click through. Ready? Bloop, bloop. Oh damn, it was dirty. All right. So here's the thing. This link to, right? This route is kind of messy in the sense that like I'm hard coding a route here. But what if there was a better way, TM? Right? What if I could just tell it, instead of gratitudes, I can tell it to go straight to some sort of like gratitude path. Wouldn't that be really nice? Right? Or I could do something like index path. Right? Cool. Let me think. If I want to like make a custom route and I want to build like a variable for it, for my routes, what files should I do that in? My routes. Cool. Now, if this is going to be a get to gratitudes, right, and it's going to point to gratitudes index, I want to call that something. I want to name it something. I'm going to name it as something, right? Cool, right? What do I want to name it? Let's name it something funky. Let's name it the index path, right? That's wild. So notice how I just call it index? Rails is going to auto-magically append something called path to it if I use something called as. All right? So if I call index path here, it should actually route me there. So let's find out. Cool. Boom. Okay, just kidding. Didn't like that. Didn't like index path. Does it not does it just want this? No.
Put the controller first.
No.
Let's check the route with Rails routes.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's break routes, right?
Oh, this needs to be in quotes.
No.
No?
The other part.
In your
Nope.
routes file, line 4.
I had it as quotes.
Yeah.
I didn't I? I thought I had it. Yeah, right?
Magic.
Huh. Either way. Must be the single quote thing again, right? It's like coming after me. Either way, right? I want to like nickname this called index, right? And then I'm just going to call it the index path. I can name this anything I want, right? Like, oh, let's say I want to call it don't make fun of Evans. Cool. Now I want to call Evans path. And Evans path is going to bring me to /gratitudes. So that makes sense? Yeah.
So just to clarify, so if you didn't use the as, you could still do it if you did like gratitudes _ Evans _ path? Would it still work like that if you didn't do the as?
No. Without this as, I cannot use these helper paths. I have to specify the as in terms of the helper path. I don't like saying this word. Just sounds like I'm saying something else, but this is it. Cool? All right? So like this could be like unique name, right? And then I would change this to the unique path. They're directly related. In the same way, I can probably do this as something called what? What do you want to call this? Like show? Sure, just call it the show path. That's cool. And where do you want to put this show? Let's go back to my, Cool. So let's just bloop. Cool. Instead of like all of this nonsense here, right, we can probably do show path. But here's the thing. With the index, right, with like unique or something like that, am I going to any particular resource? Like, am I showing anything in specific here? No. Here, though, I have ID that needs to be interpolated. All right? So if I just do show, does it know which one? No. I have to tell it which one. And I can tell it by just going, hey, go to 1. All right? So let's go back to index. Unfortunately, if I tell it to go to 1, all of them will go to 1, right? Because I'm hard coding that value in there. But what I can do is you see this G, which stands for gratitude, right? G for gratitude, or gains. I could just drop the object in there. You can throw the object right in. And so if I do that, let's see what happens. Boop. Boop, boop. Rails is smart enough to know that each of these objects has an ID. It's always going to just grab the ID out of the object and pass that in. Does that make sense? If I really wanted to get ultra mega specific, I can say, hey, I'm looking for the ID for each of these. But Rails is smart, right? If I give it the object, it's just going to pull the ID. Are there any questions of these Rails helper methods, helper paths? All right, cool. I want to show you where you could see all of your routes, and then we'll talk about resources, and then we'll wrap up. Cool? So Any questions again on this show path and why the show needs this interpolated ID? All right, versus the index. Like, do I need to pass in something for the index? No, because index is just going to this like index route. There's no specific one. Meaning, let's take this one step further. When I'm doing edit, and I'm doing some sort of edit path, is that edit going to need a specific object? Right? Who says yes? Who says no? Okay. When you're editing, right, are you editing all of them or one of them? One, right? Which one are you editing? Well, I have to tell that URL which one you're editing. So when I do edit, I'm also going to need to put in the object, right? And so that's kind of like the logic behind it. So don't worry about memorization, just worry about the concept, right? Like when I'm editing one particular one. When I'm showing one particular one. But which one am I showing? I'm gonna pass in the object. That's how I know which one it is. Cool? All right, great. So unique and show are great, but if we're following convention, right, it's going to be the gratitudes path. Because think about it like this, right? In my Rails routes, am I going to separate all my controllers in here somehow, right? In my helpers, right? So like, let's just say I have gratitudes index, and then I had like a nachos index, or I had a nachos show. Do I want all of them to be called show? Rails is not gonna know which show to go to. So I need to be a little bit more specific in my helpers. So instead of like index here, which all of my resources will have index, I wanna put something like gratitude. Because when it comes out on the other end, it just says gratitude's path, right? And here, instead of show, I want to call it gratitude path because it's not plural, meaning it's probably just one. Which one? Well, let me pass in the object, right? And that's kind of like the convention. Are there any questions? So, you guys like being upset, right? All right. We talked about something called resources. And resources for gratitude. Gratitude or gratitudes? All right. Why gratitudes and not gratitude? Yeah, it's looking for this right here. You see how like all of them kind of highlight? I'm asking for like the routes for this. So let's check. We can do something called Rails/info/routes, and I can check all of my routes. Here we have all of the RESTful routes, all magically done for us with resources. So if we look closely, if I get rid of resources and I bring just the two back, I'm only going to have my gratitudes path, which I named, my gratitude path, which I named, that's going to point to /gratitudes ID. Going to the controller action of gratitudes or of index, gratitudes controller action show. So just to really drill down, and I'll get to your question in a second, is if I change this to weirdo path and I refresh, it's going to change this helper. Right? So that's where the as is coming in as. Cool? So again, back to regular gratitudes. Back to refresh, and that's what's changing. So resources allows me all 7 RESTful routes all at once. So if I just put resources and nothing else, I'm going to get my index, my new, create, edit, show, update. Update again because remember, update has 2 HTTP verbs, and then destroy. Cool? It's like some sort of magic, right? But in the same bank example that I gave, what if I wanted to use these gratitudes, but I only wanted it for index? I should only see my index come up. I don't right now, but as you can probably allude, right, there's more than one route. So I want to pass in an array. So I also want show. Oops. Ah. So now I have index and show. See how like the convention is right here? Are there any questions on routes, routing, custom routing, like naming, helper methods, like helpers right here? And then being able to render something in Rails and how it just relates directly to Sinatra. Yes, sir.
Can you just go back to the gratitude control?
Sure. Cool. Yes, ma'am.
One of the last, I think it's the first link to, like, you don't, I didn't need the as, like, the as gratitude part, and then it was still able to do the gratitude underscore path.
Because you had resources. Because resources will build the path, the helpers for you. Right? So let's just say, for whatever reason, you're building your app, and you're like, you know what? Convention can take a back seat. Right? And I don't like that. I'm just gonna get rid of show. I'm gonna write my own show, and I'm gonna show it who's boss, and I'm gonna call it cool path. This is the cool path. Right? I'm the cool mom, right? Now I can use cool path in my application. Just because like this is my application. I do whatever I want. But the convention, right, the standardization would just be gratitude in this case. But I can always just override it, right? I can also do like, hey, I want everything else, right? I want that new, and I want that create, and I want that blah, blah, blah. But just for show, I want it to be the cool path, right? This is how I would do it.
If you leave both of these there, which one's expressive? If you just happen to leave like, both resources there.
Let's find out. Cool. Little show action. Cool. So notice that I wrote show, and I also have show my resources. Cool. I have the cool path, right? And it goes to show. But wait, I also have the gratitude path, and it goes to show. Now I have both. Right? Why you would have both? It's not very readable, because sometimes you're going to use the cool path, sometimes you're going to use the gratitude path, and anyone else looking at your code would be like, why is both there? Be like, huh, I don't know, that was weird. And then they're just going to be confused. So code is meant to be readable. So for readability's sake, only keep one in. However, both will work if you keep them in. Cool? All right, any questions on like how Rails works from the routing point of view, with the controller, with the view? Yes?
Did the helper concept just come from the example where we had the hard, like the ugly string interpolation?
Yeah, it's just because if you can think about it, right, eventually these routes would become more complicated. Way more complicated, right? Like as you have more nested resources, as you do your many-to-many, your has-many belongs to, it's going to be like, okay, great, wizards have a lot of like spells, and then you're going to be like, okay, I want to like link to the wizards /4/spells/7, and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put wizard spells path, and I'm going to change a custom route in my Rails routes file. And so it's so much easier because it becomes more readable, right? When I link to wizard spells, right, it's going to look like this. It's going to look just like this as I write it, right? Let's say I'm an index, and I want to link to something called see all the wizard spells. And then do I want to write that whole thing, or do I want to do like wizard spell path? That's so much easier to read than seeing something like this, /wizard, right, / and then I have to like string interpolate like wiz.id /spells / another string interpolation of the wizard.spells.id. It just gets ridiculous, right? It's so much easier to see. Okay, I'll just prove my point actually. Wizard spell path. Right? Which then I would just write inside here. I would do that whole get to wizards. I would type it like one time here, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to do as wizard spell. And then it becomes a wizard spell path.
In that, yeah, there would be no interpolation. It would just be sort of like
Great.
ID.
You're totally right. But then in here, right, I can probably pass in a couple objects, right? I can pass in the object. Cool? Like, so that's why it was born. Not because like when I do my initial 7 RESTful routes that it's like saving me that much. But as you build out an app that's more than 7 RESTful routes, and you will, you build out like the app that I was working on like a year ago with the VA had, I think, like 140 something routes. It gets wild, yeah. So you probably want those helpers, because it's just more readable. Any other questions? Was that helpful at all? Yeah. Can I use messages instead of ID? Okay. G.ID and the link to? Yeah. Pass in something else. I can pass in whatever I want, but what this is looking for is the ID for this to interpolate into here, like this. This should be show, right? Does that make sense? I want to make sure I answer your question, right? But in the example I gave her, where you have like a nested resource, right? Then you can do like, let's just say like G has many of something. Right? Gratitudes have many like people. Then you can like g.person.id. And then this would be like, you know, the gratitudes person's path or something like that. And then you can like use the nested form. That's getting like really in the weeds for it, but that's just kind of like the future. Does everyone understand just this? Any questions? Great, enjoy Rails. That's all I got.